I'm Jon Wiley. I work at Google, and I'm going to show you something I think is pretty cool.
When acrylic came on the scene, there was a large group of artists that refused to do it. And they're like, I want oil paint. I would never paint in acrylic. And now they're painting in acrylic.
You just feel like you're in the beginning of something new. But at the same time, it's really familiar.
There was no way I came close to tapping the potential of what this can do.
Doing it is like nothing you've experienced.
How often in your lifetime will a new medium show up?
Drawing in virtual reality challenges you to create what's in your imagination and then inhabit it.
To me, it seems like just the tip of the iceberg of what this sort of art creation can be.
Thank you, thank you. That's Tilt Brush. That is a software application in virtual reality for the HTC Vive that my team works on at Google. I'm the director of immersive design at Google. I lead design for VR and AR and mixed reality applications at Google. We work on Tilt Brush. We work on a number of products. I'm going to tell you about some of them today. But my primary focus is to tell you about the transition that we are seeing in terms of human-computer interaction, HCI, going from one state to the next in terms of what people can do with computers. When computers first started, when we first had devices that we called computers, they were very large. They filled a room. This is a picture of the ENIAC computer. It took up a very large space. And when computers were first created, the only people who could use them and be productive with computers were people who understood the switches and the dials and the knobs and the cables. And if you think about the metaphor here of human-computer interaction, there is a human, the person, on one side of a chasm, a canyon, and way on the other side, across this very deep divide, is the computer. And in the early days of computers, this chasm was very wide, and no one had quite made it across. And the only people that could actually work with computers were the people, the humans, who learned how to speak computer. But things got better. Over time, you get to something that the computer is coming across to the human a little bit. So now it has a screen, so it's showing characters. It's something that we can see with our eyes. It's got a keyboard, so it's actually using language, letters, which, depending on how you count, we've been using for on the order of 50,000 years for language and a little bit less time than that for letters. And then it moves forward, and the computer comes a little bit closer to the human, and it's showing things in terms of spatial metaphors, right? It's literally a desktop. We call it a desktop, but it's a metaphor, right? It's got files and folders. And the human-computer interaction here, the language of the computer, it's coming across to the human, and now it's like, oh, well, humans know how to take things and move them around and put one thing on top of another thing and cause something to happen. And every single step of the way along this journey, every single time the computer comes closer to the human in terms of being able to interact with the human, you see an explosion of productivity and use. More people using computers, more people being capable with computers, more people doing things with computers, all because the computer is getting closer to us and how we naturally perceive and interact with the world. You keep going forward, you get something like the mouse. Depending on when you start counting, right? You know, humans have basically been using their hands to manipulate objects in space. That's actually where the word manipulation comes from, for, millions of years. And so the fact that now my intent is being communicated to the computer through this mouse because I'm actually able to use this mouse pointer. But the mouse pointer is an abstraction, right? It's action at a distance. Things that are happening here are happening over there. The computer still hasn't come all the way across to the human. You have to learn all of the mechanisms of how does the mouse work and what does this little button do. And then we get to a new phase of human-computer interaction. Probably the most profound transition the point where the computer has actually come very far across the chasm, and that's the smartphone. And with smartphones, this is one of the most human of computers. It fits in my hand. It's comfortable to hold. It fits in my pocket. I can take it where I want to go. I can go with my computer. It's got a touch screen, so rather than an abstraction, rather than a mouse off to the side, I'm directly manipulating software on the screen. It's a much more natural way of interacting with computers. And what happens when, again, the computer comes all the way over to the human, right, is that you see an explosion of usage, way more productivity. Smartphones have taken over the earth, right? Every one of you has a phone. It is the fastest growing technology in history. And all because it is more human in how it works. It is come across to us, and we don't have to learn a special way of interacting with a computer. But it's not all the way across yet. It hasn't come all the way across yet, because it's still limited somewhat. It's a tiny square. It's here in my hand. But there's so much more to how we navigate and interact with the world. There's more places to go. And it's in this creation of the smaller, more portable computer, it's enabling things that have been impossible before. Now, the computing is actually moving into our environment. It's moving into our phones, of course, our pockets, but it moves into our homes, and it moves into the things that we wear, and it moves into the things that convey us from one place to another. But I think that the remainder of the chasm to be crossed, that little bit of distance left, is the role of virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. You heard Jon earlier, he talked about these things as being on a spectrum, on a continuum. Virtual reality is about being immersed, being present in a space, with augmented reality, taking the actual reality that you perceive, overlaying objects in that space. And then with mixed reality, the virtual objects and the real objects begin to interact with each other. I have a physical object here that is interacting with virtual objects elsewhere, right, to create them on this big screen. But this distance that we have yet to go, the little bit we have left across the chasm, if you think about the way that you naturally interact with the world around you, right? You move your body through space, you perceive everything around you, you can look with your eyes from one place to another, you can turn your head, your entire body is a mechanism with which you interact with reality. And it's only through that, it's only through computers understanding fully how humans move and look and see and perceive, perception, which is what you heard Jon say, that's the last bit. That's where the computer has fully crossed over the canyon. And what we think is going to happen, again, as I said, at every stage of human-computer interaction in history, every single time the computer has gotten better at working with humans, you have seen a huge increase in how people use computers, how productive they can be, what they can achieve, what they can create. Every single time, you have seen an explosion of creativity and productivity with computers. That's what's ahead of us. That's what's in our future. Through the computer being able to understand us in virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality situations, that is where we're going to get an amazing, amazing explosion of potential. But we're not there yet. You've heard this, I think, twice now, right? Which is we're in the very early days of this technology. Yes, people have been talking about virtual reality since the 60s, 1960s, but then there was a resurgence in the 90s. We hear about the promise of this, and it's still early days, that's true. But we think that there's some actual use cases, some value that can be created today, some experiences today that are better in VR than they might otherwise be in other media. Immersive gaming, that's a very clear-cut one. Games are very popular in VR, and it's driving the content for that platform. Personal cinema. So think about this. There's a really big screen behind me. It's huge. GeekPark probably went to great expense to put this most amazing screen behind me. But what if you could have this screen in your pocket? What if you could have this screen wherever you went? You could have a screen this size and watch whatever you wanted on it. Well, that's what you can do with virtual reality. As the resolution improves, as the technology improves, you can just have this screen with you all the time. And then transporting yourself, going to places that you've never been before, like where Darth Vader lives, right? Going places you could only imagine and experiencing them and walking around in that space and interacting in that space. And then as James talked about, bringing us together. A lot of people, I think, maybe criticize or worry about virtual reality being an isolating technology. But the truth is that virtual reality can actually bring us together. Virtual reality can take people who are very far apart and bring them together in the same virtual space. We also think that VR has a huge potential for learning. People tend to learn best when they can interact directly with the thing they're trying to learn about. And training, whether that's in terms of the medical field or in terms of the construction field, anything that involves actually moving through space, you can achieve a lot of learning through experiential learning in VR. Tilt Brush, you saw earlier, that's one of our applications that we've created. It allows you to paint in 3 dimensions, to paint around you. And if you think about that for a second, this is one of the fascinating things about VR. It's impossible to do that today. It's actually impossible for you to paint in 3 dimensions. They're not without great expense and a great amount of time and a great amount of resources, right? And so the level of creativity that can be unlocked by the particular medium that is VR is impressive. And then also professional access, anything that requires visualization. If you think about architecture, medical fields, data analysis, any of these things can be enhanced by VR because as people, we perceive the world in stereo, in 3D. And to make full use of our senses of perception, we really need to be able to see things in our environment that are in 3D, in stereo, near things are near, far things are far. So we think that professional access is important as well. So talk really quick about Daydream. This is our platform for high-quality mobile VR that we created. We announced it last year and created and shipped a few products. The way it started, the way that Daydream and the way that Google VR started was with a little product called Google Cardboard. Millions of these devices, or cardboard-like devices, have made it out into the world. People watching video on them, people playing games on them. It's an extremely accessible form of VR. It is not the end-all, be-all of VR. It is not the high-end system like the HTC Vive, right, or the Oculus Rift. But it's a little taste of the red pill. It's a little taste of what you might be able to do, what you might be able to see, and what you might be able to perceive in VR. There's actually our collaboration with Lucasfilm and Verizon. We released Droid Google Cardboards for when The Force Awakens came out. But Daydream is a platform for VR to create a really good, high-quality experience on mobile VR. And it requires 3 things: smartphones, the phone that you actually put into the device. It requires a headset and a controller, a mechanism of viewing the content and also interacting with it, and content is king applications. Let's talk about the headset real quick. So the Daydream View headset is designed by Google. It's designed to fit a number of phones. So one of the things that we're trying to do is enable as many phones as possible to be able to give you a great virtual reality experience. And so we work with partners to create phones that are Daydream ready. They have all of the pieces and all of the components necessary to have a really good experience in VR. So the Daydream View headset can fit a very large number of phones. And it also has the controller. Here's another look at the View headset. We have a removable faceplate on the interior. We also have these capacitive dots. So one of the challenges of VR is aligning the phone to the optics. And so we actually have capacitive dots in there that actually detect where the phone is alignment and adjust it accordingly. But I think the most important part of the Daydream experience is actually the controller. So in VR, you want to be able to experience, actually every single time people are in virtual reality, the first thing they do is they're like, where are my hands? Because you're experiencing a space, you're inhabiting a space, you want to have some sort of ability to interact with that space. And so having a controller that works in that space is really important. It's really important to a sense of presence, a sense of actually being there, being able to interact with the space. Now, because of our tracking technology, we're not like the HTC Vive, right? We're working with mobile devices. This is not full room-scale virtual reality. It's called 3-degree of freedom virtual reality. But there's an amazing amount of things you can do with just this very simple controller. You move it around in space, and so you can point at objects. And the ability to point at something is actually a fundamental mechanism of interacting. To show intent. This is a huge part of human-computer interaction, is to actually figure out what the human wants to do, is divining intent. And so a great way to do that is to point. Headsets also come in a number of colors, because one of the things we thought about with the Daydream View headset is that this is something that you wear, right? Rather than having something that you might attach to your television and then decide to design something around that you might wear, why not work from things that you might wear every day, clothing that you might wear? And so the entire Daydream View surface is actually covered in cloth. I mentioned phones and being able to use a wide variety of phones. This is the series of phones that are currently Daydream ready. We're going to be adding more phones throughout the year. And then we have a huge amount of content that we're currently have shipped, and we're also creating even more content to bring to the platform. There's the Daydream Homeworld. And here I just want to show a quick video of the expressiveness that you can get with the controller. You can wave a magic wand, cast spells, you can throw boomerang, you can cook up pancakes on the beach, go fishing, a wide variety of activities, of interactive activities that you can do with the controller that we've created for the Daydream View. So that's mobile VR. It's in a really good state today, but there's so much more to do. There's so much more we can do. And so our team at Google VR, not only are we working on mobile VR, but in order for us to really understand the potential and the power of where this technology is going, we have to build up all of our muscles in that space. We have to learn how humans are going to move through these spaces and use these technologies to the maximum of their ability. And so not only are we building for mobile VR, which is progressing nicely, but we're also building for higher-end devices, like I mentioned, the HTC Vive. We're focusing on all of these things, and we've created, as I said, Tilt Brush, which allows you to paint in virtual reality. But we've also created another product that is this incredible experience in virtual reality, and it's Google Earth VR. So these are some of the quotes from people who were able to use the product as soon as we released it. If you go and you see all the reviews are glowing. What people are saying about Earth VR is it's very positive. Here it says, "I can almost feel the wind in my hair, and I never want to leave. It was a profound experience, as any as I've ever had. There's a real sense of discovery, and there's new perspectives, similar to what astronauts report as the overview effect." The overview effect is, and maybe Buzz Aldrin will tell us about this tomorrow, but it's the fact that you can see the entirety of the blue marble that we live on, and that perception, that changed point of view gives you a different point of view about and a different relationship with the planet. Other things that people have said while using Google VR is that they were crying afterwards. They had a deep emotional experience with using Google VR. And I think it's the power of this technology, of this interaction, of this new human-computer interaction, which is going to create deep connections with people in ways that computing has never created before. So I'll close on this. This is just a nice little clip with Google Cardboard. We have a product called Google Expeditions. And what it does is it enables children anywhere in the world to get Google Cardboard and then go on virtual field trips anywhere in the world, places where they probably wouldn't ordinarily be able to go. And you take something as simple as this. It's just, every one of you have this. It's the phone in your pocket. You combine it with something as simple as Google Cardboard, and then you have this transformative experience. All these children, it never fails. They're always delighted, thrilled, and engaged with the content. This is a little taste of what VR can do today, and what it's going to be able to do in the future is going to be transformative. Thank you.